The Apache woman had always carried a quiet strength inside her. Even as a child, people sensed a kind of calm power in the way she moved, spoke, and listened. She grew up with stories of her ancestors' stories about courage, dignity, and freedom. Her family taught her that every person was born with a spirit that should never be controlled by others. She believed in this deeply, and it shaped the way she saw the world. Life in her homeland had always felt open and full of meaning. She enjoyed the sound of the wind moving across the hills and the smell of warm earth after rain. She learned how to watch the sky, how to follow trails in nature, and how to understand the language of silence. These skills made her confident and independent. She had always known who she was, but the world around her was changing. New people had come into the land, people who did not understand her culture. Misunderstandings grew, and confusion often filled the spaces where peace used to be. One day, during a moment of tension and fear, she was taken away from her people. No harm came to her, but she was carried far from her home, unable to return. Her hands were bound with metal chains to prevent her from leaving, and she soon found herself on a journey she had never chosen, even in this new situation. She remained calm. Her spirit did not bend. The chains felt cold, unfamiliar, and heavy, but her eyes stayed steady. She refused to let sadness or fear take root in her heart. Instead, she remembered the strength of her ancestors. She reminded herself that her freedom was not only in her hands, but also in her mind. No one could break that dot. As the days passed, she noticed how the others around her behaved. Some looked at her with uncertainty, some avoided speaking to her, and some simply did not understand her quiet firmness. She rarely spoke, but when she did, her words were thoughtful and measured. She answered questions simply, never revealing more than she needed to. She kept her dignity close, like a blanket wrapped around her. One afternoon, as she was being moved again, she stood beneath the shade of a large tree. The sun filtered down through its branches, casting patches of warm light onto the ground. She lifted her gaze to the sky, wondering if her people were looking at the same clouds. She did not cry. She never had. She simply breathed deeply and waited. It was at that moment that a stranger approached a man she had never seen before. He looked different from the others around her. His expression was thoughtful, and his eyes carried a kind of quiet concern. He wasn't dressed like the men guiding her journey, nor did he hold himself with the same rigid posture they had. Instead, he looked like someone who traveled often, someone used to observing the world instead of controlling it. He paused a few steps away from her, studying her with careful respect. He noticed her posture straight, steady, unbroken. Even with chains on her wrists, she stood with the kind of grace that came naturally to her. Something about her presence captured him instantly. It wasn't pity he felt. It was admiration. The man finally spoke. His voice was gentle, not loud or commanding. He asked if she was all right, though he doubted she would answer. To his surprise, she nodded once. She remained silent, but there was clarity in her eyes. The man hesitated, unsure of what he should do next. But something deep inside him told him to stay. As he walked around her, studying the chains, he felt a tightening in his chest, a feeling of discomfort, as though something about the situation felt deeply wrong. He could not explain why her presence affected him so strongly, but it did. It was as if he could sense the powerful story behind her eyes. He turned to the others nearby and asked why she was bound. They gave short, uncertain answers. None of them seemed to truly understand her or what she represented. They spoke about rules, decisions, misunderstandings, things that did not explain the deeper truth. The man felt unsettled. He looked back at the woman and saw that she had not moved at all. She watched him quietly, waiting to see what he would do. After a long moment of silence, he made a choice, one he knew could change everything. He stepped closer to her, speaking in a calm voice so she would know he meant no harm. He gently reached for the chains, examining them. She did not pull away, but her eyes narrowed slightly, watching every movement with sharp awareness. The man found the latch holding the chains together. He hesitated again. If he opened it, he knew the responsibility that followed. But he also knew that he could not ignore the feelings stirring inside him. He took a deep breath and slowly loosened the latch. The metal made a soft sound as it shifted, and then the chains dropped away from her wrists. For the first time since he had seen her, a change passed across her face. It wasn't a smile, but something subtler, a small spark of her true spirit revealing itself. She stepped back, testing her freedom, her wrists now light and unrestrained. The man did not step toward her or try to guide her. He simply stood there, giving her space, letting her decide what she wanted to do. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but firm, shaped by years of inner strength. She looked directly into his eyes and said, "I'd rather die than belong to any man." She did not say it with anger. She did not raise her voice. She spoke as someone stating a simple truth about the world. Those words were not meant to frighten or reject him, they were meant to declare who she was. A person whose spirit could never be owned, directed, or claimed by another. Her words surprised the man, but they did not offend him. Instead, they filled him with a profound respect. He realized that she had survived this far because she had never let anyone take away her sense of self. She stood before him now as someone who valued freedom more than anything else, even her own safety. After she spoke, a long silence settled between them. The wind brushed softly against the trees, moving a few strands of her hair. She did not run. She did not hide. She simply stood, free but alert, waiting to see what the world would bring next. The man took a slow step backward, showing her that he understood her words. He respected her boundary. He would not follow her or try to direct her path. His only intention had been to restore something she had deserved from the beginning, her choice. The woman watched him retreat and then turned her gaze toward the open land ahead of her. It stretched far into the distance, wide and welcoming. For the first time since being taken from her home, she felt the stirrings of hope. She took a careful step forward, then another, feeling the earth beneath her feet again. Every movement felt like a return to herself. Though she did not look back, she knew the man was still standing where she had left him. Something told her that he was not an enemy. He was simply a stranger who had chosen to act with kindness at a moment when she most needed it. She would remember that, though she would not depend on it. With slow, confident steps, she continued into the open land, her spirit unbroken, her freedom reclaimed, and her heart steady with purpose. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing for certain: she was her own person, and she always would be. The Apache woman moved forward with steady steps, feeling the quiet strength of the earth beneath her feet. Her freedom was new again, like a breath she had been waiting a long time to take. She did not rush. She simply walked with calm determination, trusting that the land around her would guide her. The man who had released her chains remained behind for a moment. He watched her with respect, not wanting to disturb her path or her thoughts. He had not freed her because he expected gratitude. He had done it because something inside him understood that freedom was part of who she was. After she walked a short distance away, he slowly followed, not too close, not too far. He stayed within sight only because he did not want her to face the open land alone, if she did not wish to. But he also knew she might prefer her own space, so he kept a careful distance. The woman noticed him eventually. She stopped and turned her head slightly, just enough to see him out of the corner of her eye. He was far back, walking quietly, not trying to join her or direct her. She understood then that he meant no harm. He was simply making sure she was safe until she chose her own direction. For a long while, they continued like this. She walked ahead, choosing the path, listening to the land. He followed at a respectful distance, letting her lead without speaking a word. The sun passed slowly above them, and the day began to soften eventually. The woman reached a small stream. The water flowed gently, clear and cool. She knelt beside it, cupping her hands to drink. The man waited several steps away until she stood again. Then he stepped forward, drank from the same stream, and stepped back. They still did not speak, but something in the air felt calmer between them. A quiet understanding had begun to form, not a friendship yet, but the beginning of trust. As the afternoon light grew golden, the woman finally turned toward him. She studied him for a moment. His face was tired, but his eyes were honest. He looked like someone who had traveled many places and seen many things, but not someone who wished to cause harm. She decided then that he could walk closer if he wished. She did not say this out loud. Instead, she simply continued walking, but this time she no longer kept such a wide distance from him. He noticed her change in pace and slowly joined her side, walking carefully so he would not upset her. The land around them stretched wide and gentle, with rolling hills and soft breezes. Birds flew above them, singing lightly as they traveled. The woman pointed toward a distant ridge, and the man understood she wanted to head that way. He followed silently. As evening approached, they reached a quiet clearing. The woman looked around and seemed satisfied with the space. She settled near a fallen log, sitting with her back straight. Her eyes watching the sky turned shades of orange and pink. The man sat a few steps away, giving her space while also resting his tired legs. After a long silence, she finally spoke. Her voice was gentle but firm, the same tone she had used when she declared her freedom. She said, "You do not have to follow me." The man nodded slowly. "I know," he replied quietly, "but I thought you might want someone nearby. Only if you choose." She watched him carefully, reading the sincerity in his expression. After a moment, she said, "I walk alone by choice, but I also understand kindness." He felt relief in her words. She was not rejecting him, only explaining herself. He nodded again, respecting the boundaries she set. Night began to fall. The stars appeared, one by one, until the sky was filled with them. The woman lay down on the soft ground, using her arm as a pillow. She kept her eyes open for a long time, watching the stars, remembering her family and her home. She wondered if they were safe, if they were looking at the same sky. The thought warmed her heart. The man lay several steps away, listening to the quiet sounds of the night. He did not speak. He knew she could rest easier without unnecessary conversation. The peaceful silence stretched between them until they both drifted gently into sleep. Morning arrived with a soft breeze. The woman rose first, as she always had. She looked over the land, recognizing familiar shapes in the distance. She knew they were getting closer to Apache territory. She could feel it in her bones, as if the land itself was calling her home. When the man woke, she was already standing, ready to continue. He greeted her quietly, and she answered with a small nod. Then they began walking again. Their journey that day was filled with calm moments. They crossed gentle hills, walked through soft grass, and followed the sound of birds that seemed to guide them forward. With each step, the woman felt stronger. She began to speak little by little, simple things at first, like where the stream might be, or which path would be easier. The man listened closely, grateful for her trust. He shared a few stories of his own travels. He spoke simply, choosing harmless and gentle stories about a time he watched the sunrise from a mountaintop, or the day he learned how to read the wind. The woman listened quietly. She did not smile, but she did not turn away either. His stories were calm, peaceful, and respectful, and she appreciated that. By midday, they reached a ridge that overlooked a wide valley. The woman stopped suddenly. She recognized something: shapes of distant hills, patterns in the land. The way the wind sounded there. She pointed to the valley and said softly, "My people are that way." The man looked out at the valley too. He felt a quiet happiness for her. He knew this was the moment she had been walking toward, the place her spirit longed to return to. She turned toward him then. Her eyes were calm, steady, and filled with meaning. She said, "I go the rest of the way alone." He nodded with deep respect. "I understand," he replied softly. "You don't owe me anything. I only wanted to help." She studied him one last time, reading the truth in his words. She understood now that he had never tried to claim her or direct her. He had simply walked with her, gently and quietly, until she could return to her own path finally. She said, "You showed me respect. I will remember that." Her words were not loud, but they carried weight. For her, remembering someone was a gift. It meant she recognized his heart. The man bowed his head slightly, not as a sign of ownership, but as a gesture of honor. "I will remember you too," he said. There was nothing more to say. The woman turned toward the valley and began to walk with steady steps. each one carrying her closer to her people. Her figure grew smaller as she moved across the open land, her long hair brushing gently against the wind. The man stayed on the ridge for a long time, watching her until she disappeared into the distance. He felt a quiet peace settle over him. He knew he had been part of something meaningful, not because he had done something great, but because he had witnessed a spirit that could never be broken. In the years to come, he would remember her often. He would remember the strength in her eyes, the calm confidence in her steps, and the unforgettable words she spoke when he first freed her, that her spirit could not belong to any man. Her courage stayed with him like a guiding light, reminding him of the importance of dignity, respect, and freedom. And somewhere in the wide land she returned to, the Apache woman walked among her people again, her heart steady, her spirit whole, and her freedom shining like a star that could never fade.